Jim, this next question sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Reynold Van Overbeek Jr., if that is indeed his real name. Hello, Jim and Brian. Hope you are both doing well. Knowing WWE is scripted end to end, my question for you both is, if MJF were to go to WWE, would we as fans lose the creativity of his promos and what makes him unique in today's wrestling? Or do you think those aspects would shine through even with their shitty scripted material? So we haven't really talked about this with everything going on with MJF. What if Tony does fire him? What if T is released? What would WWE do with him?
Well, I think we've seen from Vince and everybody else agreeing to bring Cody in and giving him everything he wanted, asked for, doing all the right things. They know they need talent. And they know that they are going to continue to need talent because it's not like this is a short-term situation. Now, if MJF went to the WWE, you're not going to hear shit or goddamn. You're not going to have the shoot deals where he gets to say fuck and they bleep it, or whatever that was the other night, whether they knew fuck was coming or not. They've got the 7-second delay after Moxley fooled them when Jericho tried to trademark GFY and Moxley just came out and go fuck yourself. I'm pretty sure that that whoever's in charge of that for the network has their finger on the button better. And also they knew that was going to be a touchy segment to begin with, but you're not going to hear the language, right, in the WWE. You're just not. There's no upside for them doing that besides pissing off their sponsors and potentially their broadcast partners. You are, I would think, still going to get what makes MJF special, because let's face it, the whole reason they would be hiring him is because of his incendiary ability to talk. He's a good worker in the ring, a good wrestler, and wrestler and worker are two different things. He's good at both, but he's not goddamn, Satoru Sayama, revolutionary new style, whatever. It's his personality. Like he said, I'm not like these other goofballs that go out and have to drop people on their head. I make you feel. And so not only are they not going to, I would think with him, because that's specifically his strong point, is his speaking ability, they're not going to try to make him do everything word for word like they do most people. Because if you notice, the guys that can talk in the WWE, that's not Edge. That's a story that was probably written for him, but it wasn't written word for word like that. Cena, the guys that can really talk, Brock, I'm sure, has a game plan, but deviates from it because he forgets half what he's going to say when he goes out there. Heyman's perfect example. Can you imagine Heyman together with MJF? Can you imagine if Heyman gave MJF the Brock Lesnar mentorship treatment?
In what cases do you think a manager works for MJF, and in what cases is it completely counterproductive to who he is?
You know what? Here's the thing. MJF, the last thing he needs is a manager to speak for him. But remember when they had the manager showdown, or the managers vying to wrestle or to manage Savage, or whenever any hot new prospect comes in, more managers are after him. If Heyman was to announce that, ladies and gentlemen, we have the hottest prospect in the history of the WWE coming in, and I've signed him to an exclusive contract. Paul is almost as old as I am, and by the time MJF gets up there, he's going to be as old as I am now. So does he have to go on the road all the time? Or could you not use Heyman as MJF's entree? Here's a guy who's dealt with Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar and every other big star. He doesn't deal with jabronis, Heyman doesn't. So that automatically makes MJF a big deal. Then, like Heenan did for me, when Heenan was an announcer and I came in as a manager, Heenan gives me the big intro. Well, Heyman could give him a big intro, and Heyman could be the manipulator behind the scenes, that if you didn't want to have MJF just appear to do a pre-tape, that could be Heyman talking about him. But I'm talking about Heyman in his ear, in the way to think about, because MJF is smart enough to take the good advice and weed out any of the potentially questionable advice, kabuki-ish advice, but most of it be good. Ways to put matches together, things to say on interviews, just benefit of experience. The Strangler Lewis and Luthez dynamic. He wouldn't have to be there interfering for MJF. He wouldn't have to do the promos. If MJF was there, he could do pre-tapes. He could be in a corner. He could be a behind-the-scenes producer type. And bring him in with the goodwill. Well, goodwill may not be an applicable term. With the level of over that Heyman has gathered for himself by only dealing with main event top stars. That's what, that's just something to think about. But I'm not talking about a Heenan and Bockwinkel long-term relationship.
The biggest problem with MJF going to WWE, anytime in the next year, let's say, or 2 years, there aren't enough baby faces. They really need to develop some baby faces. Unless they're going to program him with Cody, and that would probably be great. What else are you going to do with him? Him and Riddle?
Oh, boy. But see, and that's another thing I was going to say is MJF is smart enough and articulate enough. He's articulate enough for the writers or the creative team to know if he says, well, I get the point you want me to make, but I believe I can say it more naturally. They're going to, okay. And also the fact that he obviously is a student of the game, and the stuff that he's been featured in, and not like when he was Jericho's flunky and was going along with the group or whatever, but stuff where the spotlight's been all on him, you can tell that he thinks and he knows and he tries to close up gaps in logic. So I think that they would automatically have a little more respect for him and let him, because of the nature of the personality they're getting, have a little more leeway in saying things the way he wanted to, or in picking a few things. I'm not saying he'd have as much as in AEW, but, I think he could still be himself and still do what gets him over in that environment, because and that's a thing. I used to say this to guys when I was an agent there, producer, whatever, 25 years ago. I've heard other people say it. If you don't like our shit and you want to change it, and it comes out better, then that's great. But if it don't come out as good or worse, then you've just fucked up. So that's why a lot of those guys and girls either don't try to change some of that stuff or don't have the freedom to, because they can't talk well enough to pull it off. Or they're not confident they can. They're not sure they can. I'm just saying, if you go out on live television and you're a good enough promo that you make whatever they gave you better on a regular basis, whether you're saying what they gave you or something similar what they gave you, or going into business yourself, but they like it because it's good, then they give you more chance to do that. If you ain't setting the world on fire with what they give you, don't try to start fucking changing it, because then it's just going to get heat on yourself.